There is a single measurement, 1 inch, smaller than the width of your thumb, that separates a haircut that ages you from one that instantly takes years off your face. And almost no woman over 60 has ever had it explained to her. Not by a magazine, not by a stylist, not by anyone at all. It's not about length in the way you're thinking. It's not about going shorter or longer overall. It's about one very specific inch in one very specific place that most haircuts get slightly wrong without anyone ever noticing why the result feels a little off. Here's what makes this so quietly powerful. Once you know exactly where this 1 inch belongs, you'll start noticing it in every flattering haircut you've ever admired. And you'll start noticing its absence in every haircut that left you feeling like something wasn't quite right, even when you couldn't explain what. It's the difference between a haircut that simply exists on your head and one that actively lifts your whole face the moment people look at you. Today I'm going to show you exactly what this 1 inch rule is, where it applies, and how to describe it clearly to your stylist so you get it exactly right the very next time you sit in that chair. Stay until the end, because once you understand this, you will never look at a haircut, yours or anyone else's, the same way again. Welcome back to Elegant Beyond 60, the channel built on one simple belief, that looking beautiful after 60 was never about spending more money. It was always about knowing more information, the kind of small specific detail nobody ever bothers explaining clearly. If you're new here, hello, I'm genuinely glad you found us, especially today, because this particular topic is exactly the kind of overlooked detail this channel was built to uncover. And if you're one of our regulars, welcome back. You already know we love getting specific here, not vague generalities but real precise information you can actually use. Today we're talking about the 1 inch rule. A single specific measurement that quietly determines whether a haircut lifts your face or lets it settle. This is honestly one of the most useful practical pieces of information we've ever shared on this channel, because once you understand it, you'll be able to walk into any salon and explain exactly what you need, in a way that removes almost all the guesswork from the entire process. Before we get into it, if you've ever left a salon feeling like your haircut just wasn't quite right even though you couldn't say why, do me a quick favor and tap that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, and it helps this channel keep reaching more women exactly like you. While you're there, tap like too, it tells me exactly what topics to bring you more of. Alright, let's get into exactly what this 1 inch rule actually is. What the 1 inch rule actually is. Let's get straight into it, because I don't want to keep you waiting on this one any longer than necessary. The 1 inch rule refers to the length of hair that sits directly around the face, specifically along the jawline and cheekbone area, compared to the rest of the haircut. In a haircut that genuinely lifts and flattens a mature face, there is almost always roughly 1 inch of shorter, softer, face-framing hair specifically positioned to fall right at or slightly above the jawline, regardless of how long or short the rest of the hair happens to be. This 1 inch section acts like a frame around a photograph. Think about how a photograph without any frame at all can feel unfinished, its edges blending into the wall behind it, while the exact same photograph in a well-chosen frame suddenly looks intentional, polished, and complete. Your face works the same way. Without that 1 inch of shorter, framing hair positioned correctly, the rest of your haircut, no matter how beautifully cut, simply blends into your face without ever truly defining or lifting it. With that 1 inch in the right place, your whole face suddenly reads as more defined, more lifted, and more youthful almost instantly. Here's why this specific measurement matters so much, and why it's not simply about having any face framing layers at all. Too much length in that framing section, more than about 1.5 inches or 2 inches, and the hair simply falls too heavily along the jaw, adding weight exactly where a mature face often needs lift the most. Too little, less than about 1/2 inch, and there isn't enough definition created to actually do the framing work at all, leaving the face looking as unstructured as it would with no layering whatsoever. That 1 inch window is genuinely the sweet spot, substantial enough to create real definition, short enough to stay light and lifted rather than heavy and dragging. Why this specific area matters so much as we age. As we get older, the skin around the jawline and cheek area naturally softens just slightly, a completely normal part of aging that every single one of us experiences regardless of how well we care for our skin. This softening doesn't need fixing, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but it does mean that the visual weight in this exact area matters more than it once did. A haircut with no framing structure around the jaw allows the eye to simply settle on that natural softness without anything to counterbalance it. A haircut with that 1 inch of shorter, well-placed framing hair introduces a subtle line and structure precisely where the natural softness sits, creating gentle contrast that lifts the entire area visually. This is genuinely why some haircuts feel effortlessly flattering the moment you put them on, while others, cut with equal skill and precision, somehow leave you feeling like something is slightly off without being able to name exactly what it is. In most cases, the actual difference comes down to this one very specific measurement, whether that 1 inch of framing length exists in the right place or not. How to identify whether your current haircut has this rule applied. Here's a simple way to check your own hair right now, without needing a mirror covered in complicated diagrams or professional training. Take a small section of hair right in front of your ear, on either side of your face, and gently pull it forward toward your jaw. Look at where the natural end of that section falls compared to your jawline itself. If that section falls significantly below your jaw, several inches past it, there is likely no true 1 inch framing rule at work in your current cut. If it falls dramatically above your jaw, sitting up near your cheekbone or higher, the framing may be too short to create the gentle definition we're looking for. But if that section falls right around your jawline, roughly at it or just slightly above it, you likely already have some version of this rule working in your favor. Many women discover through this simple check that their current haircut is missing this element entirely, which explains a feeling many of us have had for years without ever understanding the reason behind it. How to ask for this at your next salon appointment. This is genuinely the most important part of today's video, because understanding the rule means very little if you can't successfully communicate it to your stylist in a way they immediately understand. Rather than using vague language like "I want some layers around my face," which can be interpreted 100 different ways by different stylists, be specific. Ask for a face framing layer that ends right at the jawline, roughly 1 inch shorter than the rest of that section, blended softly rather than cut with a sharp, hard line. That specific phrasing, 1 inch shorter, ending at the jawline blended softly, gives your stylist an extremely clear, precise target to work toward, rather than leaving the exact placement and length entirely up to interpretation or whatever happens to be trending that particular season. Many women report that simply bringing this specific language into their appointment completely changes the quality and precision of the result they walk out with. Alright, pause with me for a second here. If you just did that quick check on your own hair and discovered you're missing this framing entirely, comment below and let me know what you found. I read every single comment, and it genuinely helps me decide what to cover in future videos. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, now's a perfect time, because we still have several important details left to cover, including exactly how this 1 inch rule needs to be adjusted slightly depending on your hair texture and thickness. Let's keep going. How this rule adjusts for different hair textures. The 1 inch rule isn't a completely rigid, one-size-fits-all measurement, and it's worth understanding how it shifts slightly depending on your particular hair texture, since applying it identically across every hair type can sometimes produce inconsistent results. For fine, thinner hair, that 1 inch framing section should generally sit toward the shorter end of the range, closer to 3/4 of an inch above the jawline rather than a full inch below it, since fine hair tends to fall flatter and can read as heavier than it actually is even at shorter lengths. For thicker, coarser hair, that same 1 inch section can comfortably sit at the fuller end of the range, occasionally extending just slightly below the jaw, since thicker hair has more natural body and won't drag or weigh down the face the way fine hair might at the same length. For curly or wavy hair specifically, this measurement needs a bit of extra consideration, since curl pattern causes hair to appear shorter when dry than its actual cut length, sometimes significantly so. If you have naturally curly or wavy hair, mention this specifically to your stylist, and consider having that 1 inch framing section cut slightly longer than you might expect, allowing for the natural shrinkage that occurs once your curl pattern settles into its resting state after drying. Common mistakes that undermine this rule even when it's attempted. Even when a stylist attempts to apply this general concept, a few common mistakes can undermine its effectiveness considerably. The most frequent issue is cutting that framing section with too sharp, too precise an edge, rather than blending it softly into the surrounding hair. A hard, blunt edge at that length creates a stark line that can look somewhat dated or overly severe, rather than the soft, natural lift the rule is actually designed to create. Always specifically request that this section be blended, meaning gradually feathered into the surrounding length, rather than cut with one clean, straight line. Another common mistake is applying this framing length symmetrically on both sides of the face without accounting for the fact that most faces have subtle natural asymmetry, meaning one side may genuinely need the framing section positioned very slightly differently than the other to achieve the same visual balance. A skilled stylist will adjust for this naturally, but it's worth mentioning if you notice your own face has some natural asymmetry, so your stylist can account for it specifically rather than applying an identical measurement blindly to both sides. Why this rule works regardless of your overall hairstyle or length. One of the most valuable aspects of this particular rule is its universal applicability. It doesn't matter whether you're wearing your hair long, short, curly, straight, layered throughout, or in one uniform length. The 1-inch framing rule can be incorporated into virtually any overall style, because it operates specifically on that one small section around the face, rather than requiring any particular overall haircut structure to function. This means you genuinely never need to sacrifice a style you love in order to benefit from this principle. You simply need to ensure that small specific section near your jawline is addressed correctly, regardless of everything else happening throughout the rest of your hair. Let's bring everything we've covered together, because I want this to genuinely stick with you the next time you're sitting in that salon chair. The 1-inch rule refers to a small section of face framing hair, roughly 1 inch shorter than the surrounding length, positioned to fall right at or just slightly above your jawline, blended softly rather than cut with a hard edge. This small specific section acts like a frame around your face, creating definition and lift precisely where mature skin often benefits from it most. Adjust this measurement slightly based on your hair texture, shorter for fine hair, slightly longer for thick hair, and accounting for natural shrinkage if your hair is curly or wavy. And when you're at your next appointment, use specific, precise language rather than vague requests, asking directly for a face framing layer that ends at the jawline, roughly 1 inch shorter than the rest, blended softly into the surrounding hair. None of this requires an expensive haircut or a dramatic change to your overall style. It simply requires this one small, precise adjustment, applied correctly, to transform how your entire haircut reads on your face. If this video changed the way you think about your next haircut, that's exactly why I make these videos. So before you go, do me one more favor. Like this video so more women your age can find it too. Drop a comment telling me whether your current haircut has this 1-inch rule applied, or whether you're bringing this specific request to your next appointment. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. Because next week we're covering another small, precise detail that quietly changes how youthful your entire look reads. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. One small inch placed correctly can genuinely change how the whole world sees your face, and now you have exactly the words you need to ask for it properly. I will see you in the next one.